Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app and use promo code CHGO when you sign up. Very special show today. If you're joining us on YouTube, spoilers, there's our guest. He's right there. But if you're listening to podcasts, we're going to hold it for a little bit longer. You know what I mean? We're not going to tell you right away, even though it's in the description. Hey, smash that like button on YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube page. Make sure if you are a podcast listener that you are subscribed or following there as well. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We would greatly appreciate that. And keep in mind, as we are about to do a draft preview with our friend Chris Peters, we are 4 days away from the draft lottery. That night, we'll be on live at 7 p.m. You can watch and react with us. Then at around 7:30, 7:35, we're going to sort of hit the reset button on the show, start the official reaction podcast, hoping to talk to Cam Robinson that night. And there is a pretty decent chance we're going to have a conversation with Blackhawks general manager Kyle Davidson. So you're not going to want to miss Monday night. Everything starts at 7 p.m. So make sure you are there for that. We're waiting for Chris to connect. Looks like he had a little internet issue here.
You jinxed it.
So we'll get to him in a second. But there's a ton to ask him. You know, the Hawks, with the draft lottery coming up Monday, the worst they can pick is 5th. And I think for a lot of Hawks fans, that feels like a nightmare scenario. But in a draft as loaded as this draft is, it may not be as fatal as it might seem. The odds right now, for the first pick, the Hawks have an 11.5% chance. Number 2 is 11.2. Number 3 is 7.8. Number 4, 39.7. And number 5, 29.8. Had they finished with the league's worst record, they would have had a 25% chance at number 1. So there's your odds. Odd that the highest odds they have are to fall back a slot to number 4.
Yeah, I think it's because there's, 12 other teams that could also jump ahead of them.
Yeah.
So the odds of them potentially falling back are greater because there's more opportunity for teams to jump them. But I think as we've seen in previous years, the odds of a team really going from way back to up front is pretty low because their odds to all the teams behind them worse to jump up. So it's dumb math. It just comes down to ping pong balls, and we'll finally get an answer on Monday.
I just find it funny that the lowest odds scenario is for them to stay right where they are at 3rd.
Right.
They've got a better chance at 1 or 5 or 2 or 4 than not moving at all.
Then nothing happening at all.
But I mean, that makes sense because that, what are the odds that it stands pat? That
the only way they would stay at 3 is if everything goes chalk, or if Columbus were to jump Anaheim. It's crazy.
Yeah. But it is what it is.
All right, only a couple more days to wait. Can't wait for it to be over.
Me too.
But he's here, our buddy Chris Peters from FloHockey. He is their senior content creator. Give him a follow on Twitter at Chris M. Peters. He is our go-to for all things prospects. So, Chris, thanks for jumping on, man. We appreciate you.
Hey, always a pleasure to talk to some fellow Chicagoans. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. How was the beef?
The beef was okay. I mean, we don't have that kind of Chicago-style Italian beef, but I was like, I'm going on your podcast today, so I got to come at least halfway prepared, and that's how I decided to do it. A great pregame meal, not as good as maybe, let's say, anything from back home, but that's all right.
Yeah. Well,
desperate times call for desperate measures.
That's right. We'll mail you one in the beef sleeve.
Do what you can. Yeah, mail me beef. That's all you got to do.
I was going to put some in an envelope.
Yeah.
Here you go.
I'll eat it. I will eat it. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
All right. Before we get into the particular prospects, I know Mario had a question about kind of general in the draft, so we'll let Mario kick things off here.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to get into for the draft as a whole. It's something that we've been focusing on and talking about for a long time, and we'll get into the first round discussion in a little bit. But we did a mailbag segment called Mailbag Monday. It's something that we started here on this podcast.
We invented it.
Nobody else can use that name.
And someone asked us about goaltenders in this year's draft class, and I know it's not the most stacked class for goaltenders, and the Blackhawks kind of aren't necessarily in a position that they need a goaltender, but it's never bad to get one in each year and see what happens. One guy that I know that you've had eyes on for a while and could be available to the Blackhawks in maybe a more mid-round pick is U.S. goaltender Trey Augustine. What about his game? I've been paying attention to him through World Juniors, the U18s that just wrapped up, and he's been pretty impressive. What can you kind of tell us about him and where he might land and if he might make sense for the Blackhawks to maybe use one of those mid-round picks on him?
Yeah, really interesting player. I mean, in an interesting draft profile. He lost one game in regulation at the NTDP this year. 30 wins, 1 loss. I think he had 2 overtime losses. And so that's against colleges, USHL, international competition. He basically took over the #1 job at the World Junior Championship. So that's a pretty good profile for him, right? Like he's definitely got some tools. He's got the numbers. You like to see that. What I think makes him an interesting guy and possibly one of the top goalies taken. And I think there's actually this year there's a decent amount of good goalies, that guys that we don't have that. That Spencer Knight, Yaroslav Askarov, Jesper Wallstedt kind of guy that you're like, that's a first-round draft pick. But we do have a number of goalies that have, probably are going to go in the second round at the latest. And Augustine may even go that early. That's the interesting thing. There's really not a lot of consensus about the order in which the goalies are going to go in, only that the clump of them, the best ones are in North America this year. Michael Hrabal, Adam Guyon, Carson Bjarnason, Augustine, a few others as well are the most likely to be drafted early. And so, I think for Trey Augustine in particular, what are the things that are attractive? Well, he's a very calm demeanor in the net. His teammates, we've got a feature with him on FloHockey right now, where his teammates and his coaches just talked about his preparation and the maturity that he brings and the work ethic that he brings. And despite all that intensity in his work ethic on the ice, it's a very calm demeanor. It's a very calculating goalie. Good hockey sense, pretty good skater, good feet. Technically sound. I think that's another thing. The one thing is he doesn't, like, we've got a guy in this draft in Michael Hrabal who's like 6'6" as a goaltender, or 6'5", like guys that are taller. And then, Trey Augustine's about 6'1". And so you look at various goalies and you say, well, UC Saros is one of the best goalies in the league and he's 5'10", but he's kind of an outlier. A lot of teams are going to hedge their bets on smaller goalies. But I think in Trey Augustine's case in particular, what makes him unique is, I think, the mentality, the maturity, and the approach. And he's going to go to Michigan State next year. He's going to be a starting goalie as a freshman. He's probably going to play the bulk of the games. He's going to be entering a situation very similar to the one that Drew Commesso did, where it's kind of a team on the rise that needs good goaltending. And I don't want to lose Drew Commesso in this because, I think his development is only just beginning. Goalies can take a fair amount longer. He didn't have the best season, didn't have the best end of the season. But I think he's a real quality goaltender and should be a guy that's viewed as a potential NHL player. But, I think in general, especially in the position the Blackhawks are in, they can't afford to be shallow anywhere. They have to just continue to compile prospects, and certainly Trey Augustine is a guy that, at least fits the profile of the kind of guys they've gotten in the past at that position.
I think we feel pretty good about the Blackhawks' defensive prospects, and it would be a shock if the Hawks were to select a defenseman with that first pick, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But they do have a pick around 19 or 20. Who are some of the players who might be available there? Not necessarily defensemen only, but just who are some of the guys that Hawks fans should keep an eye on in that spot?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think after, the first 4 guys, there's, kind of a clump of 8 to 10 guys where you're just kind of like, which range are they going to go in? And then after that, it kind of can go anywhere. I think once you start getting into the 20s, you're starting to kind of move down a little bit. You're not finding as many guys, but I think that there are a number of players. I think if you're looking for certain elements like skill, like things like that, Gabe Perreault, who just set the NTDP record for points, there's a possibility he's still available in that that top 20 before then. I think it's more likely now because of the way he ended his season that he slides further up, but he's a guy that just doesn't have as much, consensus love about him compared to, the guys we talk a lot about, Will Smith, Ryan Leonard, even Oliver Moore to a certain extent, the other NTDP players. So Gabe Perreault had 132 points this year. But the thing is, and he's Yannick Perreault's son, so he's got ties to the organization already. But, on top of that, what I would say with him is just he's one of the most intelligent players in the draft. I think his hockey sense is off the charts. His vision is incredible. He has some creativity, but he's a 5'11" guy with average to below average skating. I think it's closer to average now. He's improved quite a bit. I think some of there's some edge work concerns, some agility concerns. His straight line speed has improved. He needs to become a little bit more explosive. But that's a guy that, if you're lucky and you kind of have somebody, if enough teams are concerned about those things, that's the kind of guy that I think could get there and give you good value. But there are others, guys like Riley Heidt, who just came off of a pretty subpar under 18 Worlds, but he got there late. He's a playmaker. He's a guy that has skill. He's a guy that has vision, but again, not an incredible skater. You're going to hear, there's always going to be guys like that in that 15 to 25 range where it's like they have really good offensive tools, but there's a flaw here or there, which, prevents them from getting up into the higher discussion. So I think, but you're going to be able to find players like that. It'll be interesting to see. I think that's also going to be the range where we do see more defensemen go. Will some of the Russian defensemen go, like Mikhail Gulayev or Dmitry Simashev, or maybe the big Russian forward Daniel Boot? You've already made your top pick, so you feel like you can take a little bit of a swing. And Daniel Boot is a big body with a goal scoring ability, and he might slide down the board because of all the concerns about drafting and signing Russian players. So there's going to be options available to them in that range, and plenty of quality players. I like the draft. I like the first round. I think there's a lot of guys there that are exciting, but it's really difficult, especially, until we know the lottery order, exactly kind of how things, and even then, even if we know the lottery order, we can't absolutely project it perfectly. So that's the other thing where you say, okay, well, what's going to be really available there? But I think those are some of the names where it's like, hey, yeah, those are guys that at least have, not enough consensus around them to say they could be available in that range.
All right, I think it's time to get into the big guns in this draft. Connor Bedard is going to be the number 1 overall pick. It is assured. There's absolutely no reason, barring some sort of catastrophe, maybe something like to wiped out Mackenzie Entwistle's family. We hope to God that doesn't happen, but we'll end on that joke later, Chris. He's the number 1 pick. What makes him the consensus number 1 for what seems like the last 2 years?
Well, I mean, I think we throw around the term generational a little too loosely, but I think in terms of what he's done this season, I mean, he had a generational season in terms of production. I mean, basically one of the best pre-draft seasons since Sidney Crosby at Rimouski, in terms of averaging close to 2.5 points a game, 70 plus goals. If you include all of the other competitions that he's been in, even more, so he's had one of the great ever pre-draft seasons in terms of production. But, he's got just an innate goal scoring ability, a tremendous shot, but also the awareness and the ability to find the right place to place the shot, and, remarkable accuracy, incredible release. And then you've got his ability to change the angle of the shot. He's super deceptive with it. So he's got the mixture of deception and power that makes even NHL goaltenders a little bit nervous about him. It's what made Austin Matthews a 60 goal scorer. And then you've got, basically Connor Bedard doing a similar kind of thing in a smaller package. The other thing that I think that makes him stand out is just his overall hockey sense and understanding of, he is a dual shot pass threat. He's not always just going to shoot. He shoots a lot, but he's also so good at spotting the right play. And so that makes him even more dangerous, and it makes him less predictable. And he's not a one-dimensional talent where he's just a shooter or a volume shooter. I think he does a lot of things well. He's really improved his physical strength this year. His lower half is really where he's generating a lot of his power now, and he's also losing fewer battles. He's still going to need to get stronger physically because he doesn't have a big frame, but he still needs to continue to do that just in order to play against the grind and certainly to hold up against injury better. We haven't had too many of those concerns with him in recent years. So that's good. But, I think that he's just got so many special qualities, and then he's got, dynamic hand skills, the willingness and want to play in his own end and off the puck, but also the ability to just be incredibly dangerous. There's very, very, very few players that I've ever watched where it felt like, whether no matter where he was on the ice, no matter where he was letting the shot go from, if he had a look, it felt like it was going in. And that's the thing that I think really stands out about Connor Bedard, is that there are so few players in the world and in hockey in general that is a guy where you can put him over the boards and not just think he's going to score, you almost expect him to. And that I think will continue throughout his career because of his immense goal scoring ability and how he processes the game. I think that's what's going to really ultimately send him over the top.
Aside from his size and strength, is there anything about his game that would give a general manager pause? Like, is there anything that's going to prevent him from being a day one NHL contributor?
I don't think so. I think really at this point it's his size. He's not the most explosive skater, but he skates fine. Like it's not. I would never be concerned about that. It's just like, well, that's the difference between him and being a Connor McDavid level producer. Like that's basically what we're talking, because Connor McDavid plays a game faster than anybody else in the world can. Connor Bedard can't do that. What he can do is, he scores just about as well as anybody else. So I don't see anything else. I think he competes hard. He has, just tremendous drive. I mean, there is an absolute hunger for this player to be the best. The thing that I find most fascinating about him, a lot of years, first overall picks are sheltered. It's either their agents or it's their team, or nobody lets them near these players. Connor Bedard has embraced every single thing, every interview, post game, or specialty things, signing autographs after every game. He understood how important he was to the WHL and to hockey fans in Western Canada. And he embraced that and didn't shy away from that. And that is another thing that I think is just kind of the X factor about what Connor Bedard is. The maturity to handle that pressure and that spotlight. I think he's done it as well, if not better, than anybody I've seen in that position before.
So let's say the odds are in the Blackhawks' favor. Ping pong balls land for them at number one. Is there any doubt that he is the opening night number one center for the Blackhawks, given where they're at as a franchise right now?
I mean, who else do you have? Really at this
maybe
point,
Max Domi. Hey,
ooh. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, I think the only possibility that I could see just to create an easier transition for him into the NHL and to get his confidence up is to have him on the wing. I think there's at least an argument to be made that he might be a wing. There are very few centers at his size in the NHL. But Jack Hughes is doing it. Braden Point is doing it. It's just, are they able to do it immediately is the question. And I think the other thing too is, if you're the Chicago Blackhawks, you have to make a lot of efforts. If he is the guy, if you get him, you've got to make a lot of efforts in the offseason to insulate him properly. You can't just let him go out there by himself. He's going to need some support. There are players in the system. There are guys that you can have that are going to be part of the future. But I think if you get Connor Bedard, all of a sudden it changes the dynamic of how you have to operate your next couple of years. When Sidney Crosby first came into the league, he had Mario Lemieux. He had John LeClaire was on the team. They had older players that just, if nothing else, they're there to provide the support, the experience, and different things like that. So you have to have some of those stopgap guys, and it might take you a little bit off your path of rebuilding a little bit, but you now have one sole focus, and that is to make this player the best they possibly can be. At least when Kane came in, he also had Taves. There was a little bit of a kind of a shared responsibility there, and then they had other players around them, and with the understanding that the Blackhawks knew, hey, we're taking a step, but this isn't the end. We got a long way to go. So you need to make sure that you're insulating the player. And that would be the challenge for the Blackhawks in the offseason, with the cap space that they have, with the opportunities that they have. And they might make some signings. You're like, what is that all about? If they get Connor Bedard, they need to make sure that there's some good veteran talent around him. Even if it's not like going to help you win, just guys that are going to help get him to the next level, because now that's your sole focus of your organization.
Did you forget that Jared Tenorti is re-signed? I mean,
well, that helps. That helps. I mean, like Jared, but that's the kind of like guys like, and it makes guys like Seth Jones that much more important to your franchise. It makes those players. It makes having a Connor Murphy. If you say, okay, well, we'll keep Connor Murphy if he's willing to stay. Like those are the types of players where they've been around long enough and they can provide that level of support, because you just don't want it to be Connor Bedard and Lucas Reichel and all of the guys that you're calling up from Rockford. It can't be that way for the first year for that player.
Next up, almost assuredly, is going to be Michigan's Adam Fantilli. Is there any way that he is not the number 2 pick?
I think the only way that happens is if there's a team that gets the second pick and they are so locked and convinced that Matvei Michkov is the next best player, and they don't care at all about the risk and they don't need a player right away. That's the only way I could see Adam Fantilli not getting picked in that slot. I think the reason that we project Adam Fantilli favorably and comfortably at number 2 is because of the risk factors that exist with Michkov. It would be a much closer and tighter discussion without that. But I think that the reason that Adam Fantilli is going to probably go second overall, is the most likely to go second overall. He has the size, he has the speed, he has the ability to produce, but on top of that, he is mean. He plays the game with snarl. He plays physically. He does take care of his own end. He still needs to. There's definitely improvement that needs to be done away from the puck. The other benefit is you have options with Adam Fantilli. You can yes, he just won the Hobey Baker. He had one of the best freshman seasons ever in college hockey. Despite that fact, he didn't have one of the best seasons ever in college hockey. He can still do that next year if you want him to. If you're an organization, and let's just say the Blackhawks, for example. Blackhawks are a long way away. Does it make sense to force a guy into that situation right away if you don't have to? Buffalo didn't do that with Owen Power. Same situation, and Adam Fantilli has followed the almost exact same blueprint as Owen Power, and now you have options. That actually increases, I think that increases a player's value when you know there are other ways that you can use that player. I mean, you could technically put him in the AHL if you wanted to, and maybe a team would want to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's actually a lot that can be gained from that, especially for a player of Fantilli's caliber. But you also have the opportunity to sign a player that I think is very close to NHL ready. So that's the other benefit. So having those options available to you increases the value. But he checks so many of the boxes of a guy that could be a potential future, a number 1 center because of the speed, the physicality, the ability to score. I think the one thing that kind of shifts him, away, like the main separating factor between him and Michkov, because he's bigger and he's faster and he's stronger than Michkov. But Michkov thinks the game at a level that is like genius kind of in terms of offensive potential. And that's not what Adam Fantilli does a lot. He's a combination of the skill and power, which I think for a center, a lot of teams want. So that's the other thing, is like he can do a lot of things for your team. He has the versatility and he has the strength to make an immediate impact. He is going to the World Championships with Canada, which I think is going to be very revealing about where he is as a player in terms of his development. He was okay at the World Juniors. He finished that tournament very strongly. He got a couple of key goals late in that tournament, which was great for his confidence. And now he's going to get a chance to do it at the World Championship. So this is a player that has a lot of potential, and I don't think he's close to a finished product. And I'll be excited to see kind of the next steps he takes in his development, because again, if you do get a Bedard or a Fantilli or a Michkov, those are the types of players. Like, I think that's a group unto itself with Bedard in his own stratosphere. But I think, Michkov and Fantilli are in that next group, very tightly wound together. So that's where you kind of have to make those decisions.
Well, let's move on. That's a nice segue into Michkov himself. And you mentioned the hockey sense. What about his game stands out to you? And we'll get into the next. We'll talk about the Russian factor and what that might mean for him, potentially falling down a little bit.
Sure. So let's just break down the player first and foremost. I mean, this is a guy that everywhere he has ever been, he has scored goals. The first time I got a chance to see him live was at the Under-18 World Championship 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, he's a double underager, and he is scoring 12 goals. Scores 12 goals, got Russia to the gold medal game. They end up losing to Canada. Connor Bedard scored a major goal in that game, oddly enough. And the amazing thing about watching Michkov in that tournament was that he was one of the youngest players there, yet he knew where everything was. He knew how everything was going to play out before it ever did. And this is why I continually refer to him as an offensive genius, because I do think I've not seen a player that has the net sense, the ability to find the goaltender and exploit every angle or the opposing team as much as him. He's played in the KHL this year. He got loaned to Sochi, which allowed him to get more ice time, and with more ice time became more confidence, and more confidence came the numbers. So he is a goal scorer first and foremost, with high-end goal-scoring potential. He is a high-end playmaker. He's able to find the right areas, and he can really break things down pretty well. And so I think that is probably one of the most important factors for what he does. It all starts with his brain. Where there is legitimate and reasonable concern is that he's not a very big guy. He's not super strong yet. And he doesn't have that explosiveness in his skating that says, is he going to be able to get the space necessary at the NHL level to do what he does? I think he's going to just continue to get there. He still needs to physically develop before he can actually move forward in terms of how he manages to reach his potential. Essentially, there's a lot of just actual physical growth that needs to happen. But beyond that, I've been watching him for long enough to just feel like this. If not for the Russian factor, let's say we put him in the CHL. Does he outscore Connor Bedard? It's possible, honestly. I mean, this is a guy that we've seen do it at every other level among his peers. And he hasn't necessarily lit it up professionally, but he's outscored, in terms of scoring pace, outscored his age group. So I think he's a special player. And I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like, if not for the Russian factor, maybe I have him too. But I think that it's not just that, it's also that he has an extended contract, which is another concern going forward.
So if you're Kyle Davidson and you get the 3rd overall pick, are you taking those risks with Michkov, or are you going another direction and say a Leo Carlsson? So let's segue into a little Leo Carlsson scouting report, because I think a lot of people are leaning more towards the more safe pick in Carlsson over Michkov at that 3 spot.
If I were him, I would take Michkov. Just if it were me. If it were me, I would say we already know that the pain is coming. It's going to be here for a few years. By the time he's ready to arrive, our team will be better. We'll have some more players that are here. We'll have some of our foundational pieces. We hope that Drew Comesso pans out. We hope that Kevin Korchinski is what we think he can be. We hope Lucas Reichel is reaching closer to his potential. And then all of a sudden we've got Matvei Michkov. I just think that the gap is large enough that I would be willing to take on the risk. Now, the other thing that you have to do in this scenario is that, you have to make sure that you have done all of your due diligence. We saw the issue with Ivan Fedotov last year, signs a contract with the Philadelphia Flyers, and then is detained and sent to military camp because he had allegedly evaded his military service and obligations. We don't know exactly what's going on there. We also have had this, this tragedy for Matvei Michkov as well. His father dies, under seemingly mysterious circumstances. We may never get the full understanding of what actually happened with that. But I mean, this is only weeks ago. And now Matvei is actually back playing with the Russian national team that's, playing in some glorified exhibition games. So he's, still continuing on. But, obviously he's now gone through this traumatic experience in his life. So these are all factors you have to take into consideration. You have to do all of your homework. You have to have a good relationship with people in Russia. You have to make sure that you have, if you have your Russian scouts, you have your European scouts, everybody is kind of dialed in on what all the circumstances are. But I think from a pure hockey perspective, I think it's an easy pick to pick Michkov, because we've he's out of sight, out of mind because he's been in Russia, and we're not really paying attention to Russia. They're not getting into the World Juniors. They're not getting into the under 18s. We're not seeing the player, but he continues to be among the best in this class. You're taking on a ton of risk doing that. So I could totally understand going the safer route and getting big Leo Carlsson, who has the potential to play center, who has the size, who has the offensive ability, who has tremendous skill, who has, a high level of hockey sense himself, and tremendous confidence that he's built up playing as a professional over the last 2 seasons. High scoring season for a U19 player in the SHL this year. He was one of Sweden's best players throughout the entire World Junior Championship, including their most important games. He was always one of their best players, scoring big goals, making a lot of plays. So I see a ton of value in Leo Carlsson. And I think that, you would leave value on the table potentially if you skipped over Michkov for him, but you're also getting a player that I think could be a foundational piece of your team. I think that there's potential for Connor Bedard and Michkov and maybe even Fantilli to be franchise-altering players in the way that, say, Kirill Kaprizov was for the Minnesota Wild, or the way that, I'm drawing a blank already on the way Jack Hughes was for the New Jersey Devils. That's a franchise-changing player. Now, Kirill Kaprizov didn't necessarily change the Minnesota Wild not getting out of the first round, but they're a way more exciting team with him on it. So he changed kind of the dynamic and the complexion of their team. That's what I think those players are. I'm less certain about that with Leo Carlsson. I think he's a franchise building block as opposed to a franchise changing player, but I do think he's an exceptional hockey player. And that is a guy that I think will make a significant difference in your franchise long term. So that's, you take that into account as well. The one detractor for Leo Carlsson, he's got the size, he's got the skill, he's got the hockey sense. The feet need to come a little bit more. He's not a bad skater. It's just he's not very quick. And so you want to see a little bit more quickness from him as he develops. And that's something that, players can potentially develop over time. It's a little bit harder at this stage of their careers, but it is something they can improve.
All right, before we get to a couple more picks, Chris has been super generous with his time. We're a little bit behind on our ad reads, so we're going to jump in and grab them real quick. Want to remind everybody to support our sponsor, FOCO. You want to get fitted out in the best sports gear around, FOCO is the place to do it. They've got hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, and everything in between. It's spring and baseball is here. Get your Aloha shirts, your straw hats, polos, bags, everything you need for a game. You look around our set here behind us, we've got tons of merch from FOCO decorating our set. So it's not just clothing, it's collectibles, it's everything, including our Hayden Wisniewski Immaculate Inning bobblehead. Yep, that exists, and it's from FOCO. Check them out. Go to FOCO.com or click the link in our description below. For all non-presale items, use the promo code CHGO for 10% off your order. That is FOCO, FOCO.com, promo code CHGO.
Jay, you mentioned baseball.
I did.
Baseball season is in full swing. Whether you're rooting for the home team or betting on your favorite player, DraftKings Sportsbook has got you covered for all of this season's actions. Right now, new customers can place a $5 pregame moneyline bet and get $150 in bonus bets right away if your team wins. Plus, everyone can hit one out of the park with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Boost your winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. So join the big league action now on DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app. Sign up with the code CHGO, floating above Chris's head there. And new customers can bet just $5 on any pregame money line, and they will get $150 in bonus bets if their team wins, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the promo code CHGO. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources.
That's a lot. Should we do the pick of the week real quick?
You got
Let's
a
do
quick
it.
one?
DraftKings.
All
Knock it
right.
out. Yep.
All right, I'm in charge of the pick of the week this week, so use this advice at your own risk. But I'm going big. I'm shooting for the moon tonight. One of those fun DraftKings same game parlays in tonight's big game 2 between the Florida Panther Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm going the under 6.5. A Matthew Tkachuk anytime goal scorer, Ryan O'Reilly anytime goal scorer. Parlay those 3 together for plus 1,900 odds.
Hey, there you go.
$5 bet means you're getting 100 back. Let's do it. Under 6.5, Matthew Tkachuk, Ryan O'Reilly to score, plus 1,900. That is our DraftKings pick of the week.
I like
Love
that
it.
one. I like that one a lot.
Man.
Every time
Yeah,
you
I
get
might-
excited and say you like that one, it loses.
Well, that's true. That's why I suck at gambling. Real quick, before we move on, we had a question on our show yesterday, Chris. We'll ask you. For the next 7 years, you get Austin Matthews or Matthew Tkachuk. Who you taking?
Oh man, why would you do that to me? I would take. That is tough. I would take Austin Matthews. I think that the goal scoring talent that he has is unique. You know, he's dealt with injuries. That's probably the one reason why I would be a little leery of it. I love Matthew Tkachuk. He just plays such an abrasive style. I do think at some point, that catches up to a player, whether it's through injuries or other things. But I think he's already shown that he's every bit as good as his dad was, and maybe better now. And that was like, I didn't know that necessarily was going to be in the cards for him as a prospect, but certainly had a very high. And the amazing thing is that there was a period of time where both of those guys were on the same line at the National Team Development Program with Jack Roslovic. I was like, can you just imagine now having the U.S. Olympic team with Austin Matthews and Matthew Tkachuk on your top line?
It'd be nice.
And it makes me really, really mad. Like, really mad that we won't see that anytime soon. I was watching Edmonton too, and saying like McDavid versus Eichel was like this dream matchup that we had years ago. And then, we're probably never going to see it outside of, NHL arenas. So I don't know. That's my one rant, but I would pick Matthews. I think the goal scoring trait that he has is the separating factor. Not that Matthew Tkachuk can't score, but Austin Matthews has proven it at an MVP level so far. And that's why I would lean towards Austin Matthews.
Poor Brady Tkachuk. He's the Alex Nylander of the Tkachuk family.
Oh, that's a low blow. That's low
really
blow.
low, and I will not stand for that. I will not stand for that.
I'm just saying, of the 3, he's the worst. That's all.
Yeah, but
That's
he's
a
also
much-
light years
much
better than
different,
Alex
though.
Nylander.
Hey, I'll tell you what though, it took Matthew a few years in the league. Don't sleep on Brady Tkachuk. He's pretty
Yeah.
darn good.
All right.
Maybe use the Hughes family, not the
Okay,
Nylander family.
fine, yeah. All right, so we've got, however you want to shake out the top 4, I think we all agree it's Bedard, it's Fantilli, then it's Michkov, Karlsson, right? Interchangeable. Now it gets a little more muddy. Will Smith, Braden Yeager, Zach Benson, there's a lot of names sort of in that mix. You're Kyle Davidson. You get the 5th pick. Let's assume those 4 are off the board. Karlsson, Michkov, Bedard, Fantilli. Where are you going for the Hawks?
Yeah, there's a lot of options. I think that, the situation is for them, you can't get it wrong, right? That's no pressure. Can't get this wrong. I think if I'm looking at pure upside, if I'm looking at a player that I think still has a ways to go in their development and that there's a ceiling for him to reach, my early decision is Will Smith. I think that he just had a record matching performance at the World Under 18 Championship. I would say with the slight caveat that USA had one of the weakest tournament brackets that they've had. Doesn't really matter though, because he also had 127 points throughout the season. Austin Matthews had the previous record at 117. He got passed by 2 players in the same season this year, with Gabe Perreault getting 132 and Will Smith scoring 127. Numbers that I never thought we would see ever in that. They're all going to Boston College next year, Will Smith, Ryan Leonard, and Gabe Perreault. And I would actually tell you right now, I think of the players that you just mentioned, I think the next guy in line isn't one that you mentioned. At least if I'm thinking in terms of how the Blackhawks could potentially make the pick, there's a guy that I think that plays winning hockey and it has checks a lot of the boxes. And that's Ryan Leonard, who scored the game-winning goal for USA Hockey at the World Under-18 Championship, the Men's World Under-18 Championship. He scores in overtime. He had 51 goals this season. He played on that same line. He was the lowest scoring player, but you can ask a lot of other people, and they say he did some of the most work to make that line as effective as it was because he's physical. He hits. He knocks guys off their feet. He has power. He was able to create space to allow Perreault and Smith to work. And I think that he's risen up draft boards to such a degree that top 5 is not out of the question for him. He's probably a better skater than Will Smith. He's also, similar in size. He doesn't have the dynamic puck skills that Will Smith does. He is skilled, very skilled, but Will Smith is at a different level. I think he's one of the most dynamic players in this draft in terms of pure one-on-one potential. He made a ton of moves at the Under-18 World Championship that just blew my mind in terms of the amount of space that he created for himself and the different options that he gave himself. He's not afraid to go to the middle of the ice. He can get caught doing a little too much. I think that's something that we saw in this tournament. There are times where he forces plays. We saw the same thing with Logan Cooley last year, who went 3rd overall. I think that there's a lot there that, needs to be cleaned up. But the dynamic element that Will Smith brings, the hockey sense, the anticipation, the pure goal scoring and playmaking ability, it's really special. And I think that he has separated himself from that pack with how he's played this season.
Is there any way he catapults Karlsson?
Yes, I think there is and I think also it's possible. I don't think it's necessarily likely, but it's possible. I think there are definitely teams out there that are going to be very high on him. You say, how do we get a player like you look at different players like Trevor Zegras, how he changes the dynamic of a lineup. I think there are plenty of other players. Certainly I don't think Will Smith is at the Jack Hughes level. He doesn't have the speed element that Hughes has. But that's something that teams are looking for. And they're also getting less and less concerned about the size factor because so many of these guys have played this very finesse, fast game the way the NHL is going. It's always going to have some rough and tumble to it, but you need to have skill and speed above all at this point. And that's why I think, there's potential there. I mean, the thing that'll really disrupt the first round is Michkov. We don't know where he's going to go. Like, he could go outside of the top 4 very easily. He could go outside of the top 10 for all we know. It's really, I don't think that'll happen. Like the way it's setting up, like if the Vancouver Canucks are picking, they have enough guys in the next couple of years where they would pick that pick. I think St. Louis, same thing. Like, we're just going to take that guy. He's the best player available. But it's, that he's the wild card that makes everything shift. And so you don't know what's going to be there at 5. You don't know what's going to be there at 4 necessarily because anything can happen based on where Michkov goes. And it's also the way the defensemen in this draft are structured. We don't know exactly how they're going to change the dynamic of the first round too. So there's a lot of things up in the air that can really disrupt the first round.
All right, we have a small portion, but still a vocal portion of the fan base that pretty much has said from the get-go, it's Connor Bedard or bust. You don't get Connor Bedard. This whole season was a failure, yada, yada, yada. So just assure us and assure that, not us, we know that no matter where they pick, even if it's as low as 5, the Blackhawks are drafting not only their top prospect in the pool immediately, but a foundational player. And with all the extra picks, not landing Connor Bedard does not derail this rebuild at all.
It doesn't derail the rebuild. I think it definitely, especially since, we've got another year coming up in 2024 where we don't have a Connor Bedard, but we have a Macklin Celebrini. So be bad next year too, and you've got a chance to land a guy that would be that cornerstone player. I do think that the range that they would be picking in this draft, there is the potential to draft a foundational building block piece for your franchise. I think it more so than there was last year. And so, obviously you come away with 3 first-round picks. You feel like you've got, some good forward-looking picks there, guys that have upside, but you're going to have to be waiting for a little bit on. This year, if you get a Fantilli, if you get a Karlsson, if you get a Michkov, if you get even a, Will Smith, a Ryan Leonard, those are guys that you feel like, yes, that's going to be our number 1 prospect. That's the guy that we're going to be able to build ourselves around. That's the guy that becomes the new centerpiece. And so that's a good place to be. It's a better place than we're starting from. Connor Bedard is the shortcut. Basically, that's what he amounts to. He is the quickest route to competitiveness. You look at the years. If you get a Sidney Crosby, Edmonton is finding it still takes time. Even if you get two of the best players
Yeah.
ever to play the game, it can take a long time. It just goes to show you that even if you get that best player, if you put all your stock into that and you get that best player, nothing is guaranteed, and you have to continue to build around that player consciously. Hockey, among all of the sports out there, it is so important to have more of everything. We just watched the Colorado Avalanche, who won the Stanley Cup last year, look way too top heavy in a first round series. They only got production from a handful of players. You cannot win like that. So what I would say is, if you don't get, Connor Bedard is the guy who just makes everything a little bit easier because he's that good. But he's not the only thing that you can't hang your hat on just having that player. So I think the Blackhawks, perhaps more than any other team kind of around them, not Columbus, not Anaheim, they're the one that has the most growth or the most work to do ahead of them, I think. And that is where they're supposed to be at this point. They've kind of gotten to the studs down rebuild. They started it last year. It's kind of been in progress loosely for the last few years, but now the Kane and Taves era is officially over. It's start over time. And so that's kind of, you hope you can find a shortcut, but I think it's going to be very difficult to, there's still more pain ahead. You got to prepare for that. If you don't get Bedard this year, maybe you get a chance to get a top pick next year. There's a really good group at the top 4 or 5 picks next year. But it's just not Connor Bedard.
All right, before we let you go, Chris, we are now, 11 months removed from the 2022 draft, where the Hawks selected Kevin Korchinski and Frank Nazar. With a year of extra analysis, how do you feel about that draft class, and where do you see those guys projecting in their careers?
Yeah, well, I think if you're looking, at Kevin Korchinski, you're saying, okay, well, he is taken a step. He took a step this year. I still think he's not, maybe he's part of the plans for next year. I personally don't think he should be. I think it's still time for him to develop to be a dominant player. He's in a great situation right now in junior hockey, and that has allowed him to flourish and produce. But we saw at the World Junior Championship for Team Canada, they didn't use him in a big role. Next year, they will use him in a big role. There's development time ahead of him. So but that pick looks good right now. Looks really good. I think that's a guy that could be one of the top defensemen from the class when all is said and done. I still really like David Jiricek and Simon Nemec, but Kevin Korchinski is right in that mix of being, potentially one of the best defensemen to come out of that draft. Then you got Frank Nazar. Unfortunate injury this year. He had to start from scratch. When he came back from injury, he wasn't the same player yet, and that's because he got back. He was able to score pretty early. He was getting the hands going. The feet still need to get going a little bit, because that's his quickness was such a weapon. And as I watched him throughout the year after he returned, I was like, there's still work to be done there. So he's just going to have to, get healthy, get rested, and then build strength. And I think he'll be fine. I have no concerns about him. And then Sam Rinzel had a pretty good season. I think that he's the longest-term project of the 3 guys that they drafted in the first round. And Rinzel had a good season with Waterloo. It wasn't an amazing season. It wasn't an earth-shattering season. It wasn't the kind of season that you hope a first-round draft pick gets. But I say that with the caveat that the Blackhawks were well aware that Sam Rinzel was going to be a long-term project. Like, we're talking, he got the extra year of junior. He's probably playing 3 years at Minnesota minimum. And then you make a decision from there. And that's, of course, that 3-year window. That's also when we get into that free agent timeline. But I think, you have to give him time to breathe. And the Blackhawks obviously believed in the upside there. And he's only just kind of starting to scratch the surface of what he can do. I like the tools there, but I think overall that's still a pretty solid haul. And then you got more picks, and at this point, the Blackhawks have to be in the position of acquiring and compiling. That's all this next little bit is going to be: acquiring, compiling draft picks that gives you options. I think that's what they did last year. It's what they'll continue to do this year. It may be a few years of doing that, depending on how these drafts go, but that's unfortunately, it's hard to be patient in that situation, but that's where they are. And they have, like I said, I think they have the furthest to go of maybe any team in the league right now.
It certainly feels that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to be I had the Italian beef. I should be in a much better mood, but what are you gonna do?
You're not telling us anything we don't know.
No, but but I think it's good to point that out, and I think the McDavid Draisaitl thing is really worthwhile because, and even Austin Matthews is his first time getting past the first round himself. Like, it's not just one dude, and of course you'd rather have those guys than not. But when you look at the Cup winners, they're not built on the backs of one player. You look at Colorado last year. Yeah, they had Nathan McKinnon, but they also had Gabriel Landeskog and Mikko Rantanen and Cale Makar and on and on and on. And that's what those Hawks teams did. They had 4 lines that would kick your ass for 60 minutes.
Right.
And, and sure, it's great to have Patrick Kane there too, but it wasn't just Patrick Kane getting it done, right? So the perspective is good. It's needed. I think people need to hear from people other than us. So we appreciate your time. You've been super generous, man. This hour flew by. So thank you so much for doing it. And I know your life is about to get very, very busy. So,
oh yes.
Load up on beefs, my
prospects
friend.
never sleep. Prospects never sleep, and neither do prospect writers. So
the next time you're in town and you got some time, swing into the studio and we'll provide you with a real Chicago Italian beef.
We will shower you with beef, my friend.
That is the easiest sell job ever. I'm in.
All you can eat.
I'm gonna have an unscheduled visit at my parents' house on the south side like tomorrow. So be ready. Be ready.
We'll be here.
We
All right,
got
man.
a beef guy on call.
That's right. That's right.
We
Thanks,
got a
Chris. We
guy.
appreciate it, man.
See you guys.
Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks,
All right,
Chris.
that's Chris Peters from FloHockey. Follow him on Twitter at Chris M. Peters. Good stuff. I mean,
Absolutely.
Look, it's very clear. He said it. Connor Bedard is the shortcut.
Yeah.
And it's true, and we all know that, and we all hope it happens. But
He
if you listen to that with an open mind, there's no way you can leave feeling bad, even if the Hawks pick 5th.
Yeah, I think, the quote-unquote nightmare scenario, you're still getting someone who is going to be instantly the highest-rated prospect that you have in your system, and a player that is part of the rebuild. And I think Will Smith is a great choice. I think Ryan Leonard, the way that he's played, the more I've watched him, the more I've read about him, and the more I've kind of heard what Chris was saying, the more I've heard about that kind of aspect to him, the more I'm like, you know what, if they're at 5 and what Kyle Davidson wants to do and how Luke Richardson coaches and what they want to accomplish, the more it sounds like Ryan Leonard is the perfect fit for what they want to do. So it'll be interesting to see if they land at that 5 spot, because that really feels like the spot where the draft opens up.
Yeah. I think the draft opens up definitely by 5, but especially after Mitch Koff finally gets taken. That's gonna be like
if he drops.
If the Hawks take him at 3, or who's ever at 3 take him, then things fall in line.
Yeah.
But yeah, after the top 2, that's when things are going to get very, very interesting. But as Chris says, Connor Bedard will take a year off with the rebuild.
Oh, yeah.
But as he said, you got to have a complete team. We saw that for 3 Stanley Cup runs, a complete team. So even if they, God forbid, pick as low as 5th, because nobody picked 5th overall in the NHL draft has ever amounted to crap in the league.
Never.
There's no 5th overall picks in the Hall of Fame. None have their name on the Stanley Cup. But you have so many extra picks this year in the first and second round, and in next year's first and second round. You have all these extra picks, and that's why you can't say it was Connor Bedard or bust for the Blackhawks this year. Yes, they want him. Yes, that was the goal. But that wasn't. They weren't putting all their eggs in his baskets, where if you don't get him now, you've got 1 pick you're relying on. They're getting as many scratch-off lottery tickets as possible. That's the way to do it.
They own 10% of the picks in the top 60.
In one of the deepest drafts in recent history.
That's not bad.
That's how you do it.
I got an email from another betting resource the other day, so I'm not going to give them any credit, but I'm going to read the thing. So NHL draft value per slot ranked by All-Stars picked in that slot. So the number 1 overall pick, 19 All-Stars are picked there. That's 82%. 82.6% are All-Stars. Number 2 is second overall pick. 14 All-Stars, 60.9%. Number 3 is the 7th overall pick. 9 All-Star appearances, 39%. Number 4 is third overall, and tied for 5th is 4th, 5th, and 9th. So it's not, again, it's like, it's not just this very easy. That's from 2000 to 2022, by the way.
Okay.
It just is, nothing is assured. Bedard is assured. That is a sure thing. Connor Bedard is a sure thing.
Yeah.
Fantilli seems like a sure thing. Michkov, if he comes here, is a sure thing. But look, they picked Kirby Dach at 3, and he's on another team. You know?
Yeah, it's every
Took
pick
Cam
is
Barker at 3.
every pick is a roll of the dice.
Stanley
But
Cup champion Cam Barker.
it's true. But yeah, I think there's a lot of more solidified, more assurance that like whoever goes 1 through 5, even 4th or 5th, you're getting a player that, by all accounts, and given the emphasis that the Blackhawks have put into their development system now, a different focus into it, and more resources into it, I think you're going to find somebody who is at the very least going to be a very good NHL contributor. And look, that's if it's not Bedard and that's the baseline of the player that you're getting, that's fine. That's still a net positive.
Yeah, I think the Kyle Davidson rebuild is off to a really good start. All those extra picks last year, seeing some of that first year, there's a lot of excitement about Korchinski, and Nazar will get more excitement this year when he starts the year healthy. Some of those later picks, your Ryan Greens, Samuel Savoie, those guys, you're excited about that. This year, they're going to build upon that. Obviously, it's going to take years before we could say the rebuild was a success or a failure, but the plan that is in motion is a sound one. And it, in my opinion, as I've said many times, it's the only one it's the only road you could go at this point.
Right.
If you really want to open yourself up another long championship window that we enjoyed, a decade plus ago, this is the only way to do it. So we'll see if it pans out. It's off to a good start, and thank the maker. We'll finally know where the Hawks pick in just a couple of days.
Seriously.
Like, I don't care anymore where they pick. Just tell me where it is, and let's move on.
Let's move on. Sounds good to me.
Yes.
We're going to wrap things up, but first we got to tell you how to protect your eyeballs from this blazing sunshine.
Yeah, today is the absolute perfect day to put on a pair of Shady Rays. I was out enjoying a nice 5-mile walk this morning with a thermos of coffee and my Shady Rays in my earbuds. It was a great way to kill an hour today. And I use my Shady Rays to take on the sun, because Shady Rays have you covered for the warm weather ahead with their premium polarized shades at a very affordable price. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers a world-class product that's just as good, but I say even better, than any expensive pair we've ever worn. Shady Rays is way too humble, but I will boost them up for them. Durable frames and extremely clear optics for those outdoor adventures. And that's not all. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even right out of the box on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. You can wear your Shady Rays with confidence, because they have your back long after you purchase. And together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much-needed support to nonprofit partners across the United States through the Shady Rays Impact Program. They're doing everything from building play sets for pediatric cancer patients to providing young adults with MS the outdoor adventure of a lifetime. Shady Rays is making an impact in your community and others like it for now and years to come. And if you don't love your Shady Rays, you can exchange for a brand new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back. And speaking of having your back, CHGO listeners are getting this exclusive deal, Shady Rays' best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com. Use the promo code CHGO at checkout, and you will get 50% off 2 pairs or more of sunglasses. So try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people.
That is saving money. And if you want to save money, the Combat Energy Efficiency Program is committed to helping families and businesses in the communities they serve by helping manage energy usage and lower energy bills now and into the future.
Yeah, ComEd offers a wide variety of incentives on lighting and other efficiency upgrades to commercial, industrial, and public sector customers of all sizes across their territory. ComEd also offers free facility assessments that can help find energy-saving opportunities, like for HVAC systems, commercial kitchen equipment, or industrial processes.
Tell our listeners and viewers how that works.
I will, now that I've cleared my throat. An authorized engineer will work with you to develop a detailed assessment plan specific to your goals and needs. These can be done in person or virtually and last approximately 2 hours. Within 3 to 4 weeks, customers will receive a report detailing energy efficiency projects that they can start working on immediately. Each recommendation will include estimated energy savings, project cost, potential incentives, and simple payback. If you own a business, don't wait. Get started saving money and energy or Monergy today. For energy saving tips, lighting incentives, or to schedule your free facility assessment, go to comed.com/poweringbiz, B-I-Z.
Did you say comed.com/poweringbiz?
Were you not listening? Yes, that is what I said.
All right.
Schedule your appointment today, Jay.
I'm gonna right now, but I got to do a show first.
Stop fighting.
A little bit of news here.
Uh-oh.
I know we got a shoe off the set, but Ice Hogs eliminated last night, swept by the Texas Stars. Lucas Reichel was essentially invisible the entire playoff series and playoff stretch for the Ice Hogs. It took the final 16 seconds of the game last night before he got on the score sheet. News coming out of Germany: he will not play for the German side for the IIHF World Championships, reportedly because of an injury he suffered in Game 2 against Iowa. So that is interesting news coming across the ocean from Germany there. I just saw it. So that is maybe a reason why he was pretty much a ghost in the Calder Cup playoffs, but hopefully it's not something serious, and he can take the off season and get healthy for next summer or next fall.
Let's spend a little time on tomorrow's show talking about that too.
You guys can
about
do
the
that.
Lucas Reichel factor and his performance in the AHL playoffs, because I think it's something that deserves some attention.
Yep.
We're back tomorrow at 2, and then it'll be Monday at 7 p.m. for our draft lottery show. So don't miss that. Join us then. One final reminder: we are presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 2 p.m. on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.